Jody Meyer. I've been coming to Glass for quite a while now. Let me just and we're going to be talking today about SQL Server, getting started with Always Encrypt. There's my contact information. Okay, as soon as I get my cursor where it's supposed to be. Something about me. I actually did the math, and it's closer to that 40 number than it is that 35 number that I've been doing software development from mainframe to PC. Most of it has been in Visual Fox or Fox type of development. SQL Server, I'm a newbie at it, but I've been at it for 10 plus years now. I had a customer that reached out and says, hey, we need to have some reporting done. And so I translated all their Fox Pro, some of their reports into SSRS. That was a fun little topic. I know a little about HTML and CSS, but I absolutely love what I do. It's like putting puzzles together all day long. And the best part is helping customers do their jobs better. I love being part of the community, part of Glass, which might be Great Lakes area SQL Server, SPID. I'm still going to put you guys up there. Great group of people. If this is your first time here, please keep coming back. They are willing to share plethora of information. I used to go to SQL Saturday conferences. Those things are starting back up. But I've been so busy at work, I haven't had a chance to even look this year to see what's available. Have been to the 8KB online conferences. Those are for free. The group buy, I don't know if they're meeting anymore, but that was also free as well. I'm a speaker here at this particular users group, Virtual Fox Fest and Southwest Fox. Those are Fox Pro. The Fox community is still going strong, and I do presentations mostly on SQL Server now. So real fun. And the little guy all the way to the left holding the cup, that's my son David. So what are we going to talk about? Today we're going to talk about encryption, and we're going to set up a SQL Server database and we're not going to do the setting up with no encryption, and we're not going to do the simple VFP application, no encryption, but we are going to implement SQL Server Always Encrypted. We're going to talk about, and I might show you at the very end, just a little bit of my work that I do in Visual Fox Pro, using and connecting SQL Server to a Visual Fox Pro app. If we run out of time, that's perfectly fine, because not a lot of people work in Visual Fox Pro anymore. But the end goal here is to learn more about SQL Server Always Encrypted. So let's get started. So let's talk about encryption. So encryption what is it? You know, you have a message that you want to encode so that the message that the messenger sends can be read by the person that receives it, right? But no one else can read that message. So, and there's the formal definition of it. In encryption in SQL Server, it's the process of obfuscating or making unclear, obscuring, or making difficult the content. And there's many ways in SQL Server to do that. But when you do encrypt in SQL Server, there are things to be considered. It can degrade the performance. It can increase the size of the database. And it should be used as an as-needed basis. Why do we encrypt? Well, there are hundreds of regulations, both federal and state, that require encryption. So that personal data is protected. And in the white paper, there is a link to some information on those various regulations if you're curious. It's a good snooze to read. There's company policies that require it. It's to protect the customer's personal information against, hackers in those, and internal theft. Somebody has information that they shouldn't have access to internal into the company. You have third-party administrators where you have that they help with your SQL Server and your data, and they steal that data. And in my case, I had a customer that says, hey, we want to do always encrypted. I'm like, sure, I don't know what that is, but let's go find out what it is. So hence, I figured if I'm going to learn it, I might as well share, what I have learned with the community. So here's this presentation. So with encryption, it starts actually before we start encrypting. So there's a defense in depth is a technique where there's firewalls outside and inside the company network. There's between data centers and you have network blocks so that people can't have access to those. Inside SQL Server, there is security, that the DBAs can set up through roles, schemas, and logins. SQL Server in 2016 also has this role level security. And a lot of these things that I'm talking about outside of Always Encrypted, I don't have a ton of experience with. Honestly, I don't have a ton of experience with Always Encrypted. So this is a learning process for all of us. So inside SQL Server, there is also, you can do dynamic data masking, which I didn't realize you could do. And when I was investigating Always Encrypted, it was really cool to find out that you could do this. And like for a social security number, you can mask the data up, but not maybe the last 4 characters, which is pretty cool. With SQL Server, there is a hierarchy that encryption that is done through password and passphrases. It's encrypting data with keys and certificates. There's also the transparent data encryption, or TDA. It became available in 2016. However, it wasn't free. You could get it through the Enterprise, I believe, edition. And then I think in 2019, it is now available for not the Enterprise, but the one level down to that. So that's cool. And transparent data encryption is wonderful because you really don't have to change anything about how you query the data or anything like that. But then there's Always Encrypted. And so what we're going to do is we're going to skip this part, and we're going to actually go into, and I'm not demonstrating, I want to go into setting up the SQL Server data, Always Encrypted. So there is some SQL that I want to talk about when we go here. So let's go here. Let me go to my SQL Server. And can you guys see that okay? Whoops, now you can't. There. All right, so excellent. So I created this itty bitty database. It's called Southwest Fox Always Encrypted. And let me see, there it is here. And I didn't do anything fancy. I just, right clicked and said new database. Okay, so don't shoot me. I just made it simple so I could demonstrate. Okay, so and then we can create the logins for this. And so there is a Miracle Max guy, and and his password is MM. And anyway, I give him access to the various tables that get created. But before I do that, I have to actually create the tables. So there's just a few tables, 3 of them to be exact. There's the people AE, which is Always Encrypted table. There's the credit card type. There's the people credit card. And so I want to actually go back to here to the people. So and these tables already exist. I'm not going to have you watch me create them. And if you look at them, there's nothing fancy about them. Don't shoot me if you don't like the way I set it up. It's just for demonstration purposes. So so you can see there's the last name, middle name, and what I'm gonna demonstrate is a social security number and date of birth as going into being encrypted. But for the most part, you know, they're pretty simple. One's a date time, one's an nvarchar 9, and I'm not real sure why I chose nvarchar 9. Probably should have been a char 9, but that's what I did. So anyway, so but when I go to create it, when you're preparing to do always encrypted, always encrypted doesn't allow you to have various types of attributes, if you will. You can't have constraints. You can't have large value types of row on. And so I had to comment all of this out, otherwise it would not work. So, so that's one of the constraints using always encrypted, is that it is persnickety about, you know, what this table looks like, and that sort of makes sense, because if we're encrypting certain things, that you can't query against it. So those kinds of things. And then all this is just creating the content for the database. That's all that is. So let me go back to, all right. So I talked about that. All right. And so let's go back to my slideshow here. So anyway, we talked about that. So SQL Server Always Encrypt architecture. So with this, there is the, oops, let me go back. Oops, wrong way. Okay, there. So with Always Encrypted, there is some terminology that we have to get comfortable with. There is the column master. I'm going to see if I can will it let me? No. Oh, there we go. So there's the column master, and it is actually, we can create it through the SSMS, okay? But in in SQL Server, all it is the metadata, and it holds the location to the external key store. And in this case, it's going to be the Windows certificate store local machine. It can also be the current user. So, so we're going to do that. And then we're also going to create a column encryption key. And what that does is the column master encrypts the column encryption key, and the column encryption key is contained within the SQL Server database. And then the column encryption key encrypts the columns that we specify. So this isn't a great diagram of it, and I found some better ones, but at the time, this is what I had. So anyway, so that's sort of the architecture of it. Again, the column master key is in my case, would be the Windows certificate store. Okay, so move on. So we're going to go create the master key. We're going to go create the, and we're going to go see it in the Windows certificate store. We're going to create the column encryption key. And then I'm just going to run through these demos. Okay, so let's get started on this. And we're going to go back to SQL. All right. So, with the GUI, it is in the here we go, under security. Let me go. I can't, let's see if I can. Always encrypted. Yep. And it's here in always encrypted. And you'll see, and I'm going to get this a little so you can see it a little bit better. So in the database, under security, there is always encrypted keys. There's the column master keys and the column encryption keys. And this is where we're going to create those values. So I'm going to escape out of that. And you need to create the column master key first. And you just right click on it and you say new column master key. And it's going to think. And so what it does then is you're going to give it a name. Super simple. We'll say column master key glass 2024. Okay. And then for the key store, you can use the current user or the local. Well, if I want others to use this, I want to make sure it's under the local. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to click this generate certificate. So it's going to go do that. So I'm going to click that and you'll see that it's created this always encrypt. Okay, and then I just click OK. And you can also, if you want to, you can always do the script too. You can explore that later if you want. So I'm going to just click OK. All right, and then if I come to my, oh, yes, come here under certificates, there's my certificate right there. So you can find it in the local computer store. Okay, so, and let me go back to SQL Server. So now that the master has been created and it's now in the Windows certificate store, I am going to now create the column encryption key. And so the new column encryption key, I'm going to give it column encryption key glass and then 2024. Okay, and so now I have access to the column master key, and I only have one, as you can see. So again, you can run the scripts over here from here if you ever want to, and then you can click OK, and it goes and generates it. So now, if we look, we now have the two we have the column master key, which encrypts the column encryption key. Okay, so there we go for that. Yay. And then if we want, there's code that we can also interrogate. It's under sys column master key, so we can interrogate the column master key. And I need to make sure I'm in the correct database. And you can see there it is, the MK glass, when it was created, modified, and it will tell you where it is found. Okay, and there's its address. So, and then I can then see, you know, if there is a column, sorry, the CE, which is the column encryption key. So if I do this one, execute, oops, I think I screwed up. Control R. I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, I am. So here I can then, if I want to, I can drop it here. When you say, hey, create the script, this is what it will produce, the column master key, but I've never really got this to work. So good luck with that. And if you can, let me know that you can get it to work. It's for my local machine, so I don't know if this number was continually changes or not. I did not take the time to look into it. So here, we're going to go to the create column encryption. With all of my scripts, I have a lot of links to what I found through Microsoft. So here's that. I was thinking I was doing the other thing. So let's see if I can find this. Execute. So there's my CEK, my column encryption key. And then this is what I was thinking I was doing earlier. So execute that. And there's my column encryption key. Okay, and then its encryption value. Okay, and this is stored inside SQL Server. It tells you what kind of encryption algorithm and all of that lovely stuff. So if you're curious about that. So again, you can do this through T-SQL. And this, in my example, I was using the Southwest box where you can drop the column encryption key and then you can create it. Again, this won't probably work. I cannot repeat these values. So, and it's probably because I had already created it, I think. I'm not real sure, but this right here is what I'm talking about. So, all right, so let's go back to the presentation. So, oh, and now we're going to, okay, so we did the column master, the column encryption, and now we're going to go encrypt the columns themselves. Okay, so back here. So here, this has to be done through the GUI. And I believe you can do it through some PowerShell as well. I've just done it through the GUI. So there's some homework for those that want to do it through PowerShell. So I have my people table, and you can actually get to the column encryption, doing the column encryption on the table itself a number of different ways. So I can actually right click on the database and I can go to tasks and you'll see encrypt columns. Okay. Or I can go to the table that I want to do it on. And if you come down, you can encrypt columns this way. The other way is you can actually click on the column itself and encrypt the column. And they all come to pretty much the same interface. So I'm just going to go to the table one and demonstrate that one. So let's see, encrypt columns. And it brings up this lovely wizard. It's really easy to use. And it just really steps you through everything on the SQL, the Always Encrypted. So next. So here I had selected the people table. So, and I'm going to apply the one key, only one key for the check. So, and I'm going to do it to SQL, to the SS Social Security number, since I can't say that, and date of birth. So, and then there's an encryption type. And here is deterministic or random. And here, if deterministic, and what that deterministic means is that it always generates the same encryption value for any given plain text value. Using the deterministic encryption allows lookups, equal joins, groupings, and indexing on encrypted columns. It is not as secure. So if somebody got your data and was able to figure out, you know, if I type in this is what I'll get kind of thing, it might be easier to figure out the encryption, looking at patterns. The randomized column encryption, this one here, is used in its less predictable manner. It's more secure, but it prevents any kinds of searches against the encrypting columns. Okay.
Excuse me, Jody, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What is the strength of the encryption that's applied? Maybe it was on the screen and I missed it.
It is, oh wow.
Does it use like AES 256?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yes. So yes, that's the there, and then here. And what's nice about this is if somebody were to take this database, because the column master key is on the local computer, there's no way to unencrypt it. Does that make sense? Unless they figured out how to, because that key is actually located in your Windows certificate store, or it could be in other places as well. But like in Azure, you have some other places that you can, you know, store those keys, but it's outside the database metadata, if that helps. Okay, so I selected these two. I'm doing deterministic, and then we don't have any additional, so I click a next and next. Here you can actually generate the PowerShell to run the script later. Why would you want to do that? Because it's going to encrypt the database. Now, my database isn't very big, But if yours is very large, this could take quite some time. And if you created the Power script, then you can run it, off business hours. But since my table is very tiny, I'm just going to run it now. So here it's telling me what it's going to encrypt. So it's going to encrypt the social security number, what key it is, and the operation mode is client side, and then of course the date of birth. Okay, so let me get out of that, and I'm going to finish. And this takes a little bit. The other thing that I did not tell you, and I should have, is when you run SSMS, and to do these encryptions, you need to be able to run as administrator. This will not work if you're not running as administrator. And this is really hard to see. And I'm not real sure why they chose these colors. But if you look there, right here, it says passed. Okay. And then if you click on it, it'll say the performed encryption completely successful. Yay! So there you go. So, and then there is a log if you're curious as to what it did. And it did it there as well. So, okay, and we're closed. So, yay. And I guess I should have shown you what the table looked like prior to doing the encryption. But because of how my security level allows me to do that, if I just right click here, and if you notice, if I do a refresh too, oops, don't rename it, you'll notice that the structures haven't changed. Okay, it's still doing the nvarchar 9 and it's still doing the date time. Okay, so let me just do this. Right click, select. And there's the database, and you'll notice that everything, this is what it looks like unencrypted. So the date, and the date of birth. So yay. And if you're curious about this database, it's everything from The Princess Bride that I could find online for the various characters. So yay. So so right now that it's like, Jody, it's not encrypted. How do I know that it's actually encrypted? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up SQL Server again. And I'm going to fire it up with Miracle Max. Okay, and then connect. And Miracle Max only has access to the Southwest Fox Always Encrypted database. So here, and tables, and people, I'm gonna select. And look at that, he has it too. So I screwed something up here. This was supposed to be looking encrypted. Bear with me here a second. Let me try this again. I'm gonna close this. Try this again. Okay, there. I probably forgot to set a setting or reset a setting. Okay, so here, if I come to options, always encrypted, I did. I should have had this checked off. Always encrypted column. I'm going to check that off. Okay, additional connections, we're good. Now if I connect and I come to the database, always encrypted, and I go to the table and go to people and select. There you go. So the social security number and the date of birth is a very long string.
Hey, Jody, question?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you show the definition of the table in Object Explorer?
Right here?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm interested in the column types because they are nvarchar 9 and date time, but they're displaying as var binary.
Yes.
I wonder what it is really.
A very long ass number.
Mhm.
Right.
Probably a bar
Interesting.
binary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Yep, yep.
it's reported in Management Studio as the native,
Yes.
the underlying data type, which is interesting.
Yes. It gives you no clue ahead of schedule of, that it's been encrypted at all.
Yeah. I also wonder what it did to the size of the table, but I think I don't have to wonder. Never mind.
No, it made it
I'll
bigger.
quit talking.
No, please do. I don't mind. I don't mind. So let me get out of that. But yeah, so interesting. But what's interesting too, and we're going to go there. I mean, you can still see null values. It's so you can, so there's little bits and pieces of information that you can, glean from it. But I'm going to minimize this one. All right. And let me see if I can go back to my slideshow and see if there. Okay, there. So, and I did this with the login, so you have to go to options and turn encryption, always encrypted, that checkbox. So, and then there's my demo. Okay, so let me go back here. So, the other thing that I want to show you is in this. So here I have access to see the data as is, right? Because, I said so because I'm admin, but there are things, there are limitations, okay, when you do queries. So there, with the always encrypted, there are a ton of limitations, and there's a list in the white paper. I'm not, but such as it doesn't like images, text, the SQL variant, hierarchical, geographical, user-defined types, file stream, strings that aren't used. Oh, the other thing too is with the column switched for the nvarchar. If I were to look at the properties, it switched it from to, so it has this collation. The wizard will switch it to a different collation. So if I were to come to this one, before it was stored as this, before it went through the encryption process. Okay. And if it's deterministic, you can still create indexes on, and if you have the primary key encrypted, you would still allow you to do, encryption on those two. There's just a plethora of constraints where you can't use the always encrypted. The other thing, like foreign keys, as long as the foreign key, which is the primary key in one key, and then the foreign key and the child key, if those, you have to make sure they're using the same column encryption key and the column master key combinations. Otherwise, you'll never get a join on them. So that's another thing to consider. So let's see, what else am I missing here? All right, so let's just go, and the one is the query limitation. So if I look at this and I execute, nope, I have to select it all. Okay. So and it does just fine. We saw that already. It's just showing all of the content, but if I showed you, if I do it as Miracle Max, it shows up in this, where it's got the binary encryption. So because here the social security number is encrypted, if I run this, just run it here, I get this error, okay? So there's a rule that has to happen. And what it's saying is, the rule is that you have to actually declare a parameter and then pass it, the constraint, as that parameter. Also, you can't have it so you do this, and then do set at SSN1. It doesn't like that either, and I'll demonstrate that real quick. So come here. I'm going to execute this, and I get, so it finds Miracle Max for me. Yay. However, if I were to do set N1, it won't like this. Okay. So it always has to be on the same line. Okay. It can perform not equals, not a problem. Okay. Yay. It can do an in as well. It can do not null and is null. Not a problem. I think I had, oops. Yeah, and then if I do is null, it would be no one, because there wasn't any. Whoop. Control R. Did I get rid of the whole thing? I did. No, okay. Do it again. Should be nobody. Okay, good. All right, and then queries that will fail. There I go. So the set, it just doesn't like this, and I demonstrated that. You can't do greater than or equal, less than or equal, greater than or less than. Sort of makes sense, right? Because it would have to interrogate the entire encrypted columns, and they just don't allow it. And you get errors. It'll fail the between as well, and that makes sense too. So, and the other thing that I want to show is if you can create a table using encryption, and this is what it would look like, is just you would put the collate, you make sure that the collate is correct, and then you would use the various encryption, and there's the algorithm. And then there's the date time. So, and that's all I have for SQL Server as far as that goes. I can show you my examples in Fox Pro. Did you want to see that? I mean, but it's not necessary. I mean, the bulk of the information is what I just showed you.
We have time.
Okay, yeah, we have plenty of time. Let me just, I'll just show you. And this is just a really simple Fox Pro application. And Fox is an old technology. And what I do is modify. I actually have an INI file where it just has the connection strings. And it's so, when I do this. So, and I'm using the ODBC driver 17 for SQL Server. And then I just have to pass in encrypted yes. And then of course, trusted connection, that kind of thing. And and then the other thing is right here, is this. So you can turn column encryption on and off depending on, your connection string. And then of course, that was with trusted connection. And then I have an example here where it's SQL authentication, and I have Miracle Max for the user and password. So typically, for me, there is no way that this file, any file would be in plain text. This is all encrypted. If I were to do something like this for a production application, this would all be encrypted. It would look just as gnarly as what we saw in SQL Server. So anyway. So that's how I'm connecting to SQL Server. I have code and I'm not going to go through it. But it just, all it does is I have classes that I define and then, and it's just a class. So you have the init, you have destroys, go get the connection string, go get the SQL, connection. And then there's a SQL execute, there's the disconnect, and there you go. So it's not that, hard to do. So I'm just going to run this and I'll just show you this really quickly. I wasn't sure. Let me go look and see how I'm connecting up here. I'm actually connecting up as Miracle Max, and I'm saying encryption is enabled. We'll see what we get here. So, so I'm going to run this. I'm going to come here and I'm going to run. And this is my little application. And since I had encryption on, you can see the social security numbers. And what's really cool is like, just so you can see this, like the first name, if I were to do William, and it's an equal, and I do assert, oops, and I have a set step on, shouldn't have done that. And then here's the SQL that it did. And what I can do then is I can actually cut and paste this, and then I put it into SQL Server, and I can then, test my SQL Server against my Visual Foxflow application, which is pretty cool. However, with Always Encrypted, I am struggling with this application. I can do is null. Let me do is null. No, let me do here for the date is not null. Let's do the is null because that's less. And if I do a search and I have a set step on, I apologize. It gets here's the date of birth and it's null. And here's the SQL, that I build, that I pass then to SQL Server. Pretty slick, right? But if I clear, and since I have equals, and if I take, let's do search, we'll get whoop, darn it. It's what you do when you play around. And so if I do Crystal, nope, I want to do the social security number. If I do an equals with the social security number, this will fail. Control N. And this is the error I get. And it's because I don't have something set up correctly for permissions or something. And what it's telling me is that it's expecting something in plain text. And I think it has to do with the declare statement. And let me just show you here. So if I take this and I take it over to SQL Server, Control N, and make sure that I'm in the correct database. F5, it runs. So it's not the statement. So I'm missing a disconnect with the Windows certificate store getting the column master key. Something's not quite right. So this is my struggle. And when I go look online to see, and I'm like, I don't care if it's in C, I don't care if it's wherever. Can you just show me how through an application you're connecting into the SQL Server? And I found 0 examples, and I spent an entire month looking for that. So I'm not real. And then I did get it to work for a day, and then there was a Windows update, and now it doesn't work again. So for my customer right now, I'm going to have to tell them no to Always Encrypted if they're going to use the Visual Foxflow app and to talk to the SQL Server. So, which is unfortunate. Oh, let me go. So there. So that's one of the shortcomings. But yeah, so that's that little Foxflow app that I wrote to get it to talk to SQL Server. And at that point, I believe I am done. I really flew through this. So so there's some examples And here's the resources. There's a book that just came out. It's Pro Encryption for SQL Server 2022. It has 4 chapters on Always Encrypted all by itself. And so I'm starting to pour into that, and it's very enlightening. And he really takes the time to, this is what the SQL Server is doing with Always Encrypted. Securing SQL Server over here on this side, not as in depth. So if I were to pick a book, it would be the Pro Encryption in SQL Server 2022. Always Encrypted came out in 2016. When in 2019, there's Always Encrypted with Enclave. I have not researched that much. And my customer that I have has SQL Server 2016, and they're not willing to move. So I'm sort of stuck in that older technology at this point. So, and then there's just a lot, there's tutorials out there. There's a 15-minute video on Always Encrypted. It's pretty amazing, all of the information out, and just Google it, right? With that, if you're going to be using, like with me, I have an application, you're going to be using the ODBC drivers. There's a connection here as well. It's also in the white paper. You need to use, you can't use the default SQL Server ODBC driver. You've got to use a newer one. And of course, come to SQL Server Users Group conferences, Google it. SQL Server community is just a great bunch of people. They have always made me feel welcome, for sure. And with that, we talked about encryption, always encrypted. And I just showed you a little, and how to implement it. And then I showed you my little VFP